Today I'm going to actually start by talking about a bit of a controversy on social media about what I'm calling metahuman adventures in the metaverse. I don't know if you've been following me on Instagram and other social media, but anytime I use this metahuman adventures in the metaverse, people, and some are very and some are actually very violently reacting with negativity, saying that I stole this idea from Facebook. So, first of all, Metahuman, Unleashing Your Infinite Potential, was written in 2019, and Facebook just announced their company as Meta. So I didn't steal the idea. Secondly, I think people are misunderstanding what I mean, and this is very interesting um, because if we really understand what the metaverse is and what meta-human is, then we are ready, in fact, for adventures far beyond the imagination of Homer or the Iliad or the Upanishad or historical literature. Unleashing Your Infinite Potential was written before anything announced by Facebook. Okay, now, of course, people are using Facebook also to attack me and criticize, which is the irony of the whole thing. Meta, the word meta means beyond big in Sanskrit. So when we say meta human, it means beyond the usual human experience. And when I say metaverse, it also means beyond the usual human experience of the human universe. We experience perceptions, we interpret them as body and the world. So, meta is a top down approach. All reality begins with that which is inconceivable. All reality, perceived reality, anything that has a border, including the Milky Way galaxy or an atom, anything that has a form arises from that which is formless. And that which is formless, which has no boundaries, is meta because beyond all form and beyond all phenomena as well. I hope I'm getting through. Please raise your hand and say at least you can see me or hear me. Okay, thanks. Thanks for acknowledging. So, meta means beyond. And in the great spiritual traditions, that beyond is is a source of every experience that we can have in form and phenomena. But that beyond itself is infinite because it has no form, no boundaries. It's infinite, and the infinite cannot be conceived. That's why in spiritual traditions, when we talk on infinity, people use words like God. But now God is a loaded term because as soon as we use God, every religion has a description of God. And just so you know, any description of God or definition of God cannot be God. If God is infinite, then cannot be conceptualized in anything that is finite. So in the various traditions of the world, in the Judaic tradition, they say Ein Sof. In the Buddhist tradition, they say Dharmakaya. In the Indian Vedic tradition, they say Brahman. And, John Wheeler, who was a great scientist in the last century, a colleague of Albert Einstein, coined the expression the bit from the it. So everything that you experience is a bit of the it. The it cannot be imagined, it's inconceivable. It's incomprehensible, it's infinite, it's irreducible, it's fundamental, and it's the source of every experience, including space time, causality, and everything. So, if we were to take a top down approach to what we call reality, it would begin with the infinite. And the infinite modifies itself into that which is called finite. And everything from atoms, molecules, anything that we describe in the world of energy, information, maybe not information, because information probably is never lost, and so does energy in the relative world is never lost. But anything that we can describe and experience perceptually is a modified form of the infinite. Now, modern science today sometimes refers to this as the singularity. Singularity means space, time, energy, information, and matter all arise from this fundamental reality. But is this fundamental reality physical, or is it non physical? And so, right now, if you go on Wikipedia or Google, you are asked the following question: what are the 125 open questions in science? The number one question, open question in science is, what is the universe made of? And the only thing everybody can agree about is made of nothing. So the universe is made of nothing. It's a free lunch. And the second open question in science is, what's the biological basis of consciousness? And frankly speaking, it's a wrong question, because biology doesn't create consciousness. Biology is an experience in consciousness. We know that we have a biology. So, what is consciousness? Consciousness is meta reality. Meta reality. And those who wake up from the waking dream that we call everyday reality, they are metahumans. They've woken up from the hypnosis of social conditioning or conformity. And that conditioning goes back thousands of years: religious conditioning, economic conditioning, racial conditioning, and ethnic conditioning, and ancestral conditioning, and all these amazing, conditionings that have bamboozled us into a world where we assume that everything we see is real, when in fact it is transient, ephemeral, ungraspable. Everything, a thought, a feeling, emotion, a body, a physical object, if it is in space and time, it is impermanent and a modified form of that which is timeless. So, metahumans are those who have woken up to this fundamental identity, which is beyond human. They experience the metaverse in that they recognize that reality starts with the infinite and then modifies itself as perceptual activity, which is phenomena in the theater. And that which appears as form and phenomena, which we call the physical world, is actually an interpretation of our perceptual experiences, which are modified forms of consciousness. So, in fact, everything ultimately is made of the infinite appearing as the finite, whether it's my hand or my watch or this book or an atom or a molecule or, in fact, galaxy or other universes. So reality begins from that level, and then it moves to subtle levels. And those subtle levels, if you're a scientist, you'll say quantum levels, elementary energetic particles as seen or determined by the uncertainty factor. But by the time you measure, a particle is gone. So too, every experience is like that. It's sensations, feelings, images, interpreted as form and phenomena on the screen of the invisible, which is formless. So, metaverse is actually the invisible screen of consciousness, which is infinite, but then it starts to modify itself into the blueprints of creation. In the same way as when you build a house, you have a blueprint, and the blueprint is created in the consciousness of an architecture, and ultimately it manifests as the house. The house is impermanent. Even the blueprint is relatively permanent because you can put it somewhere on the cloud, but the consciousness in which these blueprints are created is timeless. So reality moves from, once again, the infinite formless and then subtle. In our wisdom traditions of Vedanta, those subtle levels are called the bliss body, the subtle body, and the physical body. So the physical body is matter and energy. The subtle body is mind, intellect, and ego. And the causal body, which is the original, referred to as Ananda Maya, Kosha, Ananda Shakti, of the invisible infinite bliss, Sat Chit Ananda. So, what is metahuman? Up to fundamental reality. Metaverse is the beginning of the blueprints of the physical world that we want to manifest. Certainly want to manifest a more peaceful, just, sustainable, healthier, and joyful world. And the technology we have, the bit from the it, is digital technology. So digital technology is what we're using right now to connect in this space of consciousness, which is the space of consciousness. Right now, where we are is the space of consciousness. So, and I'll do a little meditation with you to show you why every experience is in the space of consciousness. As we expand our experiences through digital technology, zeros and ones, and soon zeros and ones, which is quantum computers, then we will be able to create of the world we want to manifest. And those blueprints will be, as Wittgenstein, the great German philosopher, said, we are asleep, our life is a dream, but once in a while we wake up enough to know that we are dreaming. What do we wake up to? The source. The source is pure consciousness, pure awareness, pure being. I am before I am Deepak, or I am Susie, or I am, this experience. Whatever the experience is in time, but I am is not in time. So then digital technology becomes our energetic connection to the infinite, even though we will never comprehend the infinite, but we'll be able to navigate in this space to create a better world. So, with this, I just want to introduce you to maybe today's meditation, which gives you a clue to what I'm saying. And if so far what I have said is making sense to you, then please give me a shout out. If so far it has made any sense to you, then give me a shout out. The technologies we use in this space together, and thanks for the shout out, are mindfulness, self inquiry, reflection, contemplation, concentration, prayer, a quiet mind, controlled breathing, and the experience of what can only be called, and it utilizes the principles of consciousness. Consciousness is awake and aware. Consciousness crosses the boundaries of mind, body, matter, and everything that we perceive. Consciousness is creative. Once it creates something, consciousness keeps it in balance. Consciousness is dynamic. It calls upon energy for action and things. Consciousness is whole. It permeates everything in existence equally. Consciousness is self organizing. It oversees orderly systems and structures. Consciousness is harmonious. Every level of nature is part of the whole. Every thread contributes to the cosmic tapestry. And if we can actually give people experience like this, then that will be the metaverse adventures that we will navigate together as meta humans. So now let's very simple meditation today to see how we can actually begin the process. Okay. And so I'm going to start actually sharing some meditations with you on this from my book, Total Meditation, which followed Metahuman. Okay, so here's a practical exercise. Just follow my uh, instructions, and right now, because you're with me in the metaverse, actually, you can't do everything I am suggesting. But imagine that this is today's meditation. Okay, so when you have an opportunity, take your fingers and run them across something that has a rough texture. Okay, such as sandpaper. You can run your fingers across some rough texture, such as sandpaper. Now, then close your eyes mentally and feel the same rough texture mentally. You can do that right now. Imagine that you are experiencing the rough texture of sandpaper. Next, you could dip your hands in ice water and then immediately imagine the same freezing sensation. Easy? Next, you could gaze on a crimson rose, then close your eyes and see it again in your mind's eye. So, gaze at a rose and then see it in your mind's eye. Gaze at me right now and see it in your mind's eye. Look at your own body and see it in your mind's eye. Think of somebody of love and feel the love in mental space. Create an image right now. Let's do some experiments. So create an image in your consciousness of sunset, of a green meadow, of red roses, of the Empire State Building, of a place that you visited for vacation last year. Okay, so what you'll see is that every sensation, whether we call it physical or we call it mental, every sense perception, whether we call it sound or taste or texture or or um, sound, any of the five senses, any of the five senses, sound, touch, sight, taste, smell, um, all of that, those experiences are happening in consciousness, nowhere else. Right now, you're having the experience of your handheld device in consciousness, the experience of your body in consciousness, the experience of everything that exists can be conceived and experienced in one space. And that space is formless, boundless. But today, we are navigating in that shared space through digital technology, the it from the bit. So, for today, the exercises I will suggest to you are look at any object, physical object, or a person, and remind yourself that the experience of that physical object or that person is in you, in what we call I am. So first start to look at objects and say, those objects, the experience is happening in me, in my consciousness, in I am. And then once you're done with physical objects and sense perceptions, then do the same thing with emotions. Where do they exist? In me. Okay. Any mental images, just that we started out with, whether it's the Empire State Building or a sunset, where's that experience happening? In me, in I am. There is no experience that is not happening in I am, including the experience of my own body mind, physical body mind. Deepak Chopra is an experience in I am. That's why the spiritual traditions have paid so much attention to I am. Jesus Christ, before Abraham was, I am. Moses, when he asked the burning bush, God can't be comprehended, but says, "What's your name, God?" God says, "I am that I am." Okay, so before Abraham, I am means Abraham is in time, Deepak is in time, but and Moses is in time, but I am is not in time. I am is meta reality, the fundamental reality from which the whole universe is manifesting in what we call timeless now. So I will quote to you a beautiful phrase from Sanskrit, from the Bhagavad Gita, where Lord Krishna, speaking as I am to Arjuna, says, "Prakratim swam vashtabai vishrajami puna puna." Curving back within myself, I create again and again. I create the mind, I create the body, and I create the universe. So that was also the basis of another book I wrote called You Are the Universe. So these books that I've been writing all along, and I'm just pulling them out for a moment, You Are the Universe, total meditation, metahuman, and even life after death are based on a deeper understanding of how I am conceives, constructs, governs, and becomes everyday reality. So, today, very short meditation. Close your eyes wherever you are, sit quietly, keep your feet firmly planted on the ground, uncross your feet, keep your hands open, and close your eyes and start to repeat your full name to yourself. I am Deepak Chopra. I am Laurie Lee. I am Katerina, or even your first name. It doesn't matter. But recognize even that as you're repeating your name, you should recognize that that's not who you are. That's your name. It's something we can find on LinkedIn. It's your bio. But as you're repeating your name, now think of all the things that are associated with that name: job, relationships, personal interactions, social interactions, everyday experiences, eating, breathing, digestion, metabolism, the whole world of experience. That is, I am with my name and form attached to it. Now, stop the connection for a moment. Instead of saying, I am Deepak Chopra or I'm Mary Smith, just say, I am mentally and keep repeating, I am, I am, I am mentally. And then replace it with the mantra of I am, which is aham. It's the sound, the vibration, the vritti, the fluctuation of I am that appears as every experience in the theater of space, time, and causality. So we'll take at least half a minute to silently repeat the mantra, aham, with the eyes closed. And don't mind the time, just do it right now. And if you get distracted, then come back to the mantra, aham, or come back to your breath or any sensation in the body. And we'll take almost a full minute to do that right now. Aham, 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 aham. Now let the mantra go and just rest in your own presence. Presence, source, I am, infinite being, awareness, Ein Sof, Brahman, all refers to the presence in you without which there is no experience, either of mind, body, or the world. So just rest in that presence of I am, even without using the words. Rest in being, in presence. Awareness has no shape, no form, no color. Awareness is not something you can see, hear, touch, taste, or smell, or imagine. But without it, there is no experience of body, mind, or world. And when we come to this level, then we realize what is real and what is not real. The unreal never existed, which was a temporary fluctuation of the real. The real never dies. Subtler realms of existence give rise to physical manifestations. The subtler realms outlive the death of the physical realms. The subtler realms are born in that which is inconceivable, formless presence. When we go to the source, Slowly, we will learn to craft our personal and collective reality. So, indeed, we can aspire to a more peaceful, just, sustainable, healthier, and joyful world. And here we will connect as well, creating metaverse adventures for metahumans beyond anything that we can currently imagine. So rest for a moment or two in your own presence. Now feel your body and open your eyes. Okay, thanks for listening. Thanks for having the patience, for allowing me to explain these ideas to you. And I hope you enjoyed the meditation. I'm happy to answer a few questions right now if you want. So, who would like to ask a question? Kathleen McMahon. Kathleen, go ahead with your question. Kathleen McMahon,
Good morning.
good morning.
Um, Earlier this year in March, I was in I don't want to call it an accident. I was in a vehicle overturn about 12 times on the Alaskan highway. And the thing that I wanted to speak to you about that experience was that when the car went over, my entire consciousness went white. And I woke up at the bottom, and then I had to uh, climb 250 feet back up to the highway in the cold and that sort of thing. And then I had to spend 5 days away from my home because I live actually down on Vancouver Island. Um, and when I arrived home, it felt like when I opened the door to my house that everything around me was shifting back into reality and became solid again as I experienced it. Is that a function of realizing that everything is able to be adjusted in my perception?
Okay, so Kathleen, first of all, thanks for sharing. I hope everybody heard you because that's a very beautiful, authentic experience. And the light you experience is the light of awareness. Okay, it's the light that all religions talk about, the light of being. And that is fundamental reality, which then morphs itself into shimmering, subtler realities, which then appear as frozen physical objects. But all physical objects are actually modifications of subtler realms, and all subtler realms are modifications of the infinite light of awareness. Call it God if you want, or being, or presence, or Ein Sof, or Brahman that I mentioned. So, right these days, I'm engaged in actually looking at something called terminal lucidity, which is a form of terminal lucidity that you experience. So, this is now well documented, so you can go online and check it out if you want on Google or wherever. Many people who have dementia, who have had a stroke, who are otherwise totally disabled, even a near vegetative state, before they pass, suddenly they are lucid. They have tremendous clarity. They have experiences similar to you, subtler realms, light, and then coming back sometimes with that shimmering, evanescent, ungraspable fluctuation of the light of awareness, and then suddenly back into the body and the physical world. This is also the same experience that some people have, which we call near death experiences. End of life lucidity is frequently for only a few seconds, sometimes for a few minutes, and sometimes it is many days before the person dies. And also, end of life lucidity, people, and my mother experienced it, by the way, and my grandmother and my mother's sister too. Before they pass on, they see or have experiences of relatives and friends and even pets that have passed on in the subtle realms, and they feel consoled. These days, in some hospice centers, and I'm involved with a couple of them, where we do psychedelic assisted ketamine um, therapy for end stage of life, people can have that experience. My agent, who passed away recently from cancer, I sat with her and a psychotherapist, and we took her through a microdose ketamine journey, and she crossed over and came back totally consoled, and was actually looking forward to her passing, which happened a week later. So your experience legitimizes all the other people's experiences and is very similar to that. And so thank you for sharing it. Next question. Is that, Kathleen, is that an answer that satisfies you?
Absolutely. It was the feeling of going over, and I literally had said at that point in my mind,
Mhm.
I just said, "Okay, this is this is okay."
Mm.
And that was when it felt like something else took over. So yes, thank you
Yeah.
very much.
That's also called the peace that passes understanding. Okay. Okay. We can do a couple more questions if there are any.
Hello, this is Melanie. Thank you all for allowing me to ask a question.
Go ahead, Mel.
Uh, well, I share a similar experience with Kathleen. I have always had this, I guess, like an innate feeling of being connected to something outside of myself. And it was June of 2021, this past June, just a freak accident, I guess, happened. I guess it wasn't even an accident, but a chandelier fell out of a ceiling and collapsed on the back of my head. And I was in the hospital, and no life threatening injury or anything. And after the concussion, I began hearing like songs, and having these visions, and even in meditation, like it's so hard to describe the visions to people who I know, because they think I'm just bizarre. But I've began manifesting things that actually come to pass, that actually happen. And I've never really been able to do that before, but I'm abandoning, I guess, the sense of programming or program belief system that I've grown to have all my life. And ever since I have begun the spiritual journey, things have really unfolded for me in a positive way. However, it has eliminated some relationships in my life that I've been very connected to. And so I guess it really isn't a question that I have, but I just feel like a great sense of community in this space, and to know that I'm not crazy, but that I'm connected and in a very special way. And I know
Oh,
that about myself.
yeah, Melanie, first of all, beautiful sharing, but
Mm.
you're not crazy. We are living in a crazy world, a world that has created nuclear weapons, mechanized ways of killing each other, extinction of species, climate change, uh, poison in our food chain. That's crazy. What you experienced is sanity that comes from knowing your true being. So that was a beautiful sharing. And what, other people would metaphorically express these experiences you're having as tapping into the matrix of the metaverse. You are literally tapping it and downloading songs, this, that, the other. And actually, people who can reside in I am, in that presence, this opens the door to what we call dormant non-local abilities, such as extrasensory perception, precognition, memory of other lifetimes, or even being able to connect with people without communicating with them,
Yes.
which is through communion. So that's a beautiful sharing.
Thank you so much. Thank you for everything that you've shared as well. And I'm
Thank you.
embracing this journey.
Thank you. So before we all go, I think here's some very simple thing we can all do today. Anytime you have an experience, return to the source of your experience, the presence in which that experience is happening. Right now, as you're listening to me, just be aware of that which is listening. Try it right now. As you're listening to me, be aware of that which is listening. That still presence is your soul. It's not your mind. Your mind is constantly chattering, having a conversation, judging, labeling, defining. But behind that is a silent witness, which we call I am. Thank you very much. I'll see you next week. Thank you so much.